Welcome to our second week with contemplative photography here on my Substack page. So thank you so much for being a part of this journey. I hope the first week was meaningful to you. I hope you experienced something maybe new in that intentionality around noticing. I had a conversation with one person participating in this who shared initially that they didn't feel that they were inspired by anything. And then we had a conversation about that initially maybe it's not as much about inspiration as much as just simply what catches your eye or what you notice. And so I was excited to see some of the photos that that person shared as those were sent in throughout the week. So what we're going to start with, kind of like we did last week, is a bit of a centering time. And this time not using my photos exclusively, but instead using the photos that we've all shared during this past week. And so like last week, I encourage you to just take a few moments, take some deep breaths, slow down, center into this time, and see what others saw over the course of the last week. So we're going to continue with that sense of noticing in the week ahead, although this week we're going to focus in a little bit more on something to notice this week, as opposed to last week, which was just kind of what catches your eye just in general. We're going to be focusing in on one specific thing to be looking for, to be aware of, to be noticing, to be experiencing in the week ahead. And we'll talk about that more in just a minute. But each week over the coming weeks, we're going to spend some time a little bit with some photo technique and how I have come to recognize that, in a sense, many of the different aspects of photography actually have a very strong tie to different aspects of contemplative practice. And so this week we're going to start with, well, focus. One of the core things about any photograph is about the choices made in what is in focus. So depending on the camera that you use, you have more control over what's in focus and what's not. And we'll talk about that in a moment. But probably all of us have had that experience of a photograph where we thought we had something in focus, and then when we downloaded it or we got a print made and we looked at it and we're like, oh, you realize that the subject that we were hoping to be in focus was far from it. And so that's often some of the things that happen with autofocus on cameras. But there's sometimes you make a choice about what you want in focus and what you don't. And sometimes you even make choices to not have anything in focus. So for example, in the photograph that you see on the screen right now, that's a photograph of Christmas lights. And that one, it was a deliberate choice that I made to not have the lights in focus. I wanted to have more of just the soft sense, as opposed to the very sharp color, sharp lines and so forth of the little Christmas lights. You'll often see a photograph like this around Christmas time or around a holiday time. There's other reasons you might want to have a subject or the whole photo not in focus, and those are choices that can be made. The other, on the flip side though, is there are times that you absolutely do want everything in focus, or you want a specific subject in focus. So for example, a landscape photo, you're taking I'm using the language again. You have a landscape in front of you. You've just climbed a 14,000 foot peak and you're standing on the summit and you've got your camera up there. The last thing you want to have is a big old blurry photo of what's in front of you. You want to have everything that's in sharp focus. Or summer of 2015, my wife and my kids and I got to spend a month in South Africa. And we got to spend time in Kruger National Park and another game area called the Addo Elephant Reserve. And in both of those places, there is a ton of wildlife photography to do. The last thing you want to have is you get that one moment of seeing, for example, a leopard. The photo that you see on the screen there was our one experience of seeing a leopard. We literally saw this leopard for all of about maybe a minute or maybe 2 minutes. And this was the best photo that came out of that moment. And even this one isn't quite in focus. But if it was completely blurry, well, it kind of loses something. So, excuse me, so focus is important in the choices that we make about what we focus on in a photograph. So on a camera like this, a DSLR, you have a lot of control over what you are going to have in focus. So within the viewfinder, there are little dots that you can set up of where you want the autofocus to center on. It could be right in the middle of the photo, it could be up in the top left, it could be on the middle on the left, whatever it might be, you can have that control over it. And so in autofocus mode, you set that focus point and the camera does its work. You also, at least on this camera, have this little switch on the lens that can switch it to manual focus. And so with that one, you make your focus using the focus ring on the lens. And that's where, like the Christmas lights photo that I showed you, is having that, getting the photo framed and then just turning it to manual focus and playing with that focus ring a little bit and trying to get the effect that you're looking for. So those are the things that you can do. But one of the things to note about it is that focus for a camera like this is on the lens. It's not in the body of the camera. Yes, the body works with the lens, and the guts of the computer and the technology and so forth are in the body, but the body of the camera itself is not where the focusing happens. Focusing happens in the lens. Now, on an iPhone or an Android phone or a small little handheld camera, it's a little bit different, but on something like this, so whatever lens you got, whether it's just one like this one, which is my regular just walk around lens, or whether it's one that's like a very small lens or even like a big old zoom lens, focus happens in the lens. And so where this speaks into the kind of the contemplative practice is that, in a sense, if you think about ourselves, our bodies, our minds, our hearts, as the body of the camera, by itself, yes, you can create a photograph without a lens, but it's not going to be much of a photograph. And you can't focus. Even if I tried to get it to focus on something, it's not going to work just in the body. There is a deliberate choice you have to make of what lens you are going to use, and you're going to connect and hook up to your camera to allow it to be able to focus on something. And we'll talk about zoom in a couple weeks and so forth, but for now it's just about focus. And that choice of what you make, whether you're going to use autofocus, kind of choose the point that you're looking for and let the camera do its work, or whether you're going to go more on a manual side, whether you want to have everything out of focus or whether you want to really manually fine-tune the control. Different things that you can do. But ultimately, though, when we talk about the contemplative practice and photography, it is that choice that you make to focus. And in our contemplative lives, it is a choice that we have to make. Contemplative practice doesn't just happen. It doesn't just happen. It is not a natural thing that we do as human beings. It is a choice that we make. It is a choice that we make to meditate. It is a choice that we make for photography. It is a choice that we make for yoga. It is a choice that we make for any of a host of other practices that are contemplative or meditative practices. Or even just simply a choice to make sure that you're taking time to just do those deep breaths. So even just being a part of this is a choice that you are making. And so focus is a choice that we make, that we are going to really seek to focus in on something. Just like we do in a photograph, so it is in the contemplative life. So our practice this week is going to be about focusing on one thing in particular. And that's why I am where I am and what I've got behind me. And what it is going to be is color. Color is all around us, right? And I'm here because this painting here is a painting by my wife and my favorite artist. His name is John August Swanson, who just passed away a little over a year ago. Amazing artist, paints a lot of religious paintings, but also just a whole spectrum of others beyond it. But one of the characteristics of Swanson's paintings are the rich and vibrant colors that are in every single one of them. There is not one of his paintings that isn't just bursting with bright and bold colors. And this was a photograph or a print that my wife chose for her gift when she finished her doctorate program about a year ago or so. And so as you see it on the screen right now, you just see the depth of all the colors, the blues and the greens and the purples and the reds and the yellows and all of it in this painting about the storm, about how we're all in the same boat together, having to row together through life. So I love sitting in this room in our house and seeing that print and just seeing the beauty of the color that just emerges and shines out from this painting. And so this week, our focus is on color. So what I'm going to ask you to do this week is to choose a color, just one color, and focus on that for this week. Now, the one caveat, well, two caveats. First caveat is maybe choose a color that is not a dominant color in your home. So in our home, we have a lot of, like in this room, there's a lot of yellow. So maybe choosing yellow isn't the best, or choosing a color that isn't dominant in your life in some way. Maybe choose one that isn't. So whatever that might be. So choose that color and be attentive throughout the course of this week of where you see that color and focus in on that each day. Where am I going to see purple, or where am I going to see green? And for your photographs this week, it's not as much about the object that you are looking at. So, if it's something red, it's not as much about the red flower, for example, as much as it is trying to just reflect the red itself. So maybe that's getting really close and just getting the red. Maybe it's being a little more abstract with it. So it's not as much about the fire engine as much as it is the fire engine red. So play with that. See how that emerges for you. But this week, see how often you will find that color. My guess is that your experience will be that you will be surprised at how many places you see and experience that color. Probably a lot more than what you would have expected otherwise, because your mind, your heart, your body, your spirit is being attuned to that color for the week ahead. So that's your assignment for this week. Same deal. If you can upload them by the end of the day Friday, that would be terrific. We'll use that as our centering piece for next week's time together. So again, thank you so much for being a part of this. I hope it's a blessing to you. Have a great and wonderful week as we see more around us.